costs, maybe the worst Disney song, if not the worst musical theater song to ever be written. But what nearly made me throw out this video script and run into the woods never to be heard from again as a professional musical theater performer and songwriter was not how bizarre and confounding this song is, but it was the top liked YouTube comment saying that this is one of the best Disney songs ever created, and a completely separate one saying that the song is perfectly crafted. And it's not just these two people and the 400 people that liked these comments either. I've seen this sentiment slowly emerging since the movie was released on Disney+. As I said in the video, Why We Love to Hate Disney's Wish, it's so interesting to me that the people who didn't think that this movie was worth paying for when it was first in theaters are now lambasting the people and the critics for being too harsh and being killjoys, and the movie wasn't really that bad. People just love to complain, when the Wish White Knights, meanwhile, are throwing it on to distract their children from the comfort of their own home so they can scroll through TikTok unbothered, instead of having paid the $100 Canadian it would have taken to go see that movie with the whole family. You didn't spend any money, of course your standards are lower, but for the rest of us, I think that we have a right to complain that we deserved a little bit better. And honestly, I wouldn't even be that bothered if it was just, this is the best Disney song ever, heart eye emoji. I don't really care about that, even though I still think that that's kind of insane. Sorry, but I do. It's the prevailing attitude of everyone who criticized Wish was stupid and wrong and they just don't know how to have a good time. I'm right. That's the attitude that bothers me. Like, this is the best Disney song ever, no matter what the haters say, and dismissing everyone's real, valid criticism for just hating. Like, best is one thing, but I have to sit here and wonder, when that person typed out that this is a perfectly crafted song in the same league as Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, like, when this movie came out, was there some sort of rip in space and time and the people who genuinely think this were sucked into an alternative universe or Wish was an actual masterpiece while we were left with this? Because that's just insane. I'm sorry, talk about subjectivity all you want. That's a crazy thing to say. Is the mouse holding your family hostage? What dirt do they have on you? I cannot stress enough that At All Costs fails on every single level from a technical songwriting standpoint, but I think because it sounds pretty, people who are easily impressed are giving it a pass compared to the other Wish songs. Sorry not sorry to make a sweeping generalization, but I can't see the praise for this song stem from anything other than a superficial and shallow engagement with it, and I want to explain why. I genuinely believe this is the worst song in the entire movie, which is saying a lot considering what I've said about the other ones. But to even imply that it comes close to the best Disney songs ever written, like, actually disgusts me. Like, Welcome to Rosa's fails as a whole, but there's at least one or two lines where it does manage to fulfill the role of what an opening number should be. This song has no lyrics that do that. Absolutely nothing is going on. They did not cook, they did not even get the pot on the stove, they didn't even look at the recipe. But how exactly did At All Costs fail? I'll tell you that it's bigger than terrible lyrics, wonky meter, and boring composition choices, though we'll talk about all that too. We'll talk about everything wrong with the song when it comes to the instrumentation, rhyme, meter, lyrics, and characterization. But this song isn't just riddled with technical problems. It's missing the most important part of any musical theater song. Good day, everyone! It is Calxiyn here, ready to nerd out on Calxiyn cares too much about something that maybe only I care about, but I'm gonna make you care. I am so serious when I say that this video almost made me, like, quit and rethink my entire life choices, so I hope that you enjoy it. To talk about the instrumentation first, this song does have a more pleasant soundscape when compared to the other songs in the movie. It has a lullaby-like quality, and it does utilize more traditional musical theater instrumentation, like having the violins, for example. And I will admit, because there is more variety, the instrumentation feels slightly more dynamic than the other songs. But it's just a feeling, right? It is incredibly superficial to say that this song is good, or God forbid, perfectly crafted in my eyes, just because it does the bare minimum and sounds nice. Like, that's like going to a restaurant and being happy that your chicken isn't raw. Not getting salmonella or food poisoning is a bare minimum requirement. I don't know if you guys can tell, but this script in particular made me feel insane, because I see people bending over backwards to praise this very generic lullaby instrumentation as the most beautiful thing they ever heard, and it's like they've been brainwashed by the movie. Like, the rest of the songs were so bad, it makes this one feel amazing when you get to it. But like, the bass line for songs in a musical is that the music is beautiful. Like, yeah, if your 4-year-old wrote this, I would say they're a prodigy, but professional composers do indeed need to compose music that people will want to listen to. And even though the instrumentation is at least inoffensive, it is missing the narrative purpose of musical theater reactions that we've talked about in other videos. If you're new here, our go-to example is Ursula. She has a new musical theater reaction element on nearly every line, with instruments sliding to reinforce how slippery and deceitful she's being, and then church-like music when she's trying to reinforce to Ariel that she is good.
Repented, seen the light, and made a switch. Yes.
And I help?
Yes, I do.
But on the whole, I've been a saint.
You also have various magic effects when she's talking about her magic. You have the trumpets coming in, and it's very foreboding. Like, that's to foreshadow how she will manipulate Ariel, that there's an element of might. Like in that song, the violins feel like deceit, but then the trumpets feel almost like force. So when I say musical theater reactions, I mean that the music is dynamically shifting based on the line that the character is singing currently, or is about to sing, or has previously sung. And you'll notice it, like, sometimes it happens during a line, sometimes it happens after, sometimes it happens before, but there's always a dynamic in there. A song is a manifestation of a character's soul, and the lyrics and composition should feel entirely unique to that character because of that. The composer channels the character's heart, and we can see this with how Alan Menken, for example, composes for the Beast versus Ariel versus Rapunzel. You should not be able to get those characters confused with each other, because each one of their soundscapes is so unique. I think the problem with this is that they did deviate from the pop sound that happens throughout the rest of the movie. Like, for example, with Magnifico's song, that is like more a traditional pop song, if you want to call it that, right? And so I feel like that they deviated with this one just a little bit, and they were like, that's enough, like, we did our job, right? But I still feel like, even though it is a little different, that this could still be like any musician singing this. It still doesn't immediately strike me as a Disney song or as a musical theater song in general. The song still doesn't feel like Magnifico, and it doesn't feel like the reactions that do happen sometimes are driven by or representative of Magnifico's psyche. If you were to listen to just the instrumentation and you had never seen the movie, would you be able to know that Magnifico was singing? Or would you think it's like Asha, or her grandpa, or her mom, right? Like, it doesn't have a definitive sound to it. You could have had Magnifico's instruments be more military-like, while Asha was more free and folk-like, but Wish never does that. They didn't even bother to give Asha and Magnifico different instruments to represent them, or work in some sort of leitmotif. Like, a lot of composers talk about, like, the cheap way, or like the shortcut, the easy way, in a good way, like this isn't a bad thing. The shortcut that they use is like making a leitmotif and then just slightly tweaking it all the time. Even Sondheim did stuff like that, right? Like, that was kind of his genius. It's like, well, I already made the thing, now let's use it in all these different ways and people will think I'm a genius. Like, he said stuff like that, by the way. That's not me disparaging him at all. I think he was a legitimate genius, but part of the genius was making something that was familiar to the audience, and yes, continuing to use that. That is a valid strategy, and they didn't even do like the musical theater 101 basics here. And because I don't feel like the music is coming from the characters, when a reaction does happen, it just feels artificial. Like, it doesn't feel like the characters caused these things to happen. It's just, oh, we're going to the chorus, let's have the violin spiral for no reason, because that's what we're supposed to do. When we talk about reactive elements in musical theater, it's that the character is causing the reactions to happen. But because no one in this song says anything of value, like, I don't believe that this change is happening because of you. I just think that it's because the composer was taught, oh, we are going through the motions, we gotta get from point A to point B, and so this is what we're gonna do to get there. And this is the first and last time that I'm going to talk about the instrumental, because I found nothing interesting. There are no hidden secrets. There is nothing that I am yearning to show you. There is just nothing. Now let's talk about Magnifico's verse. Usually in my videos, I talk about the meter, fun sounds, and rhymes in that order because it helps to facilitate the conversation about lyrical meaning and why I think that lyrics are strong or weak. However, this time we're talking about the lyrics first. In Welcome to Rosas, there is a good sentiment that is bogged down by bad structure and bad songwriting. And so in that song, I talk about the structure first. We talk about how there are good ideas trapped in horrendous structures that make the song confusing and impossible to tolerate or memorize. I've gotten comments before where people have said art doesn't have rules, but like, it does though, right? Even in traditional art, you learn stuff like anatomy and color theory and perspective. The rules are not there to stifle the creative process. Rather, they are there to help you revise and polish your work, because in musical theater, we strive for clarity above all else. Rules help you make sure that you, as an artist, deliver your thesis in the most effective way possible. And after you learn the fundamentals, you can decide whether or not you want to break them to make an artistic point. But being clever will not matter if no one understands your thesis or cares. So when we talk about Welcome to Rosas, there is a good idea trapped in bad songwriting. And the bad songwriting makes it so people do not want to listen to those little nuggets of good ideas. All that to say, I don't think there will ever be a video where I find the instrumentation completely redeemable, right? Like, I think that it's all fundamentally boring. It would need to be changed radically. But in terms of the lyrical content of most of the Wish songs, if you fix the technical problems and change a couple lines, you can kind of save the song to some extent, just like I did for this Wish or Welcome to Rosas. I don't think we can fix Magnifico's villain song. Some have tried, but I think that that's one of the ones where it's like, we can't fix this no matter how hard we try. But at the very least, Asha's I Want song and the opening number can be revised. They don't need to be entirely discarded. But the reason why there is no fixing this song in my eyes is because we can't build a house without laying the foundation, and we are starting the song on like a non-existent premise. Musical Theater 101 class, what made your character start singing? If you're a theater kid, those words have probably haunted you all throughout school as you panic and try to figure out what to say. But in terms of the script, we have a clear answer. Magnifico starts by explaining to Asha that the wishes are the best part of someone's heart. You would think then that this song should be about convincing Asha, but it's not. He turns his attention to the wishes and ignores Asha entirely after the script moment is done. And the reason why this is such a big problem is because this is a scene partner. The wishes are a scene partner that cannot respond. In theater, your scene partner can be your other self instead of another person, or sometimes we call it God. But the other self and God still needs to generate a conflict and a response from you in some way. But this is not a self versus other self song, especially because Magnifico is not conflicted about his feelings. It's a Magnifico and Asha duet. But we immediately fail on the premise of a duet, especially when it comes to a villain and hero duet. In a duet, the characters are united by a thesis, but they can either be united by their agreement or their disagreement. For example, in I Am a Girl Like You from Barbie, the Princess and the Pauper, Erica and Annalise agree with each other, but they still convey that agreement in contrasting ways. Because they have lived polar opposite lives, there's still a conflict in the sense of the journey of, I don't know if I believe we're really alike. Like, are we? How could that even be possible? You're the princess, I'm the pauper. Oh, we really are alike, but why? What makes us alike? And then on top of that, if we are alike, which we have now agreed on, what does that mean? Why is that important? Those are the building blocks of the song that build toward a revelation. The point or moral of this song is about how two young women from completely different backgrounds are unified by the same yearning and desire for freedom, and how in finding someone similar to you, you can both fight together and maybe life can change. It's a form of solidarity in a way, and there's a moral about what really matters about a person. Like, not your money or your status, it's we dream about a life that's ours, we take responsibility, we carry through, we have a voice that speaks the truth. Strength of heart, honesty, kindness, princess stuff, right? That's unison. But you can also have unison through disagreement about a thesis. In Nothing Left to Lose from Tangled, for example, Cassandra and Varian disagree with each other, but they are unified by the central thesis of nothing left to lose and what that means. Varian is warning Cassandra that if she goes down this path, she will lose herself, she will regret it, and push everyone away so far that she can never come back from making this choice. She will have nothing left to lose because she has already stripped herself of everything that matters in her very soul. But Cassandra sings that she already has nothing left to lose, and that this is a good thing, because everything else that she discarded, that was just holding her back from achieving her dreams. It was necessary to push everyone away. And that interaction is what makes it disagreement, but also unison under that thesis. What does nothing left to lose mean to these characters as they fight for what they believe is the right answer? The interaction with the scene partner and how the characters fight for what they want, either with each other or against each other, is the foundation for why a duet even exists. But At All Costs is not a duet where the characters are being influenced by each other. This is a song where they're both singing about a very similar sentiment, I guess, but like they're in the void. They can't even hear each other. You can make this an Asha solo song and nothing changes, and same with Magnifcio, and that is not good, bestie. Magnifcio and Asha are not singing to convince the other of anything or to share in a revelation with each other. They have zero reason to be singing together other than like they're both seeing the same thing at the same time, but we don't learn anything, and that means that the song is pointless. If we can cut a song in a musical and people still understand the story, it's a bad song. But the reason why people can skip this song and still understand the plot is because there's no conflict, there's no emotional journey, there's no realization, and nothing is explained here that we didn't already know. So what's the fucking point? As I mentioned earlier, one of the key things about theater is that every scene has a conflict, and that same thing applies in a musical. Even a love song will have a conflict, and even though At All Costs isn't a love song, it was originally written as one, and we'll talk about that later. But I do want to talk about a use case or a good example of characters singing in the void. I See the Light is a love song where the characters are singing in their own heads, but they pull it off. You may not immediately see the conflict in it, but the characters are actually arguing with their past selves, and they're declaring what they want out of life in the present, especially for Flynn. Rapunzel is having a more reflective moment of, I got my dream, now what? But with Flynn, like, he's belittling the person he was back then, right? Like, at the beginning of the adventure, he wasted all this time chasing things that were meaningless. He was blind, and now he sees the light because of Rapunzel. What really matters in this world is not money, and not being on an island, tanned and rested and alone, right? It's about finding human connection with other people, friendship, family, love. And the question that hangs in the air is, even though Flynn and Rapunzel both acknowledge and accept their feelings, will they act on them? Can they be together? Is there a future here? Like, she's a princess and he's a thief. Even if Mother Gothel doesn't take her back and Rapunzel goes home, there's still that lingering question hanging in the air. It's happy and pleasant and romantic, but even love is not without conflict, and the conflict in that song comes from the past, present, and future. Those are the stakes. Rapunzel and Flynn are having a revelation in the moment that they are sharing with the audience. They are realizing that they love each other and have a new dream. And the speculation for the audience, you could say, is like, okay, now they understand this. What are they gonna do about it? Like, that's where we're at the end of the song. They even go in for the kiss, but then they miss it because Flynn sees, like, the Stabbington brothers back there, right? And so there is that suspense. There's almost a will they, won't they. And again, this is information that we didn't know before. Like, we could see that they were starting to fall in love, but they didn't admit it out loud until this moment. And this same concept applies to other songs where the characters aren't singing directly to each other. Like, there's no rule saying two characters singing a duet where they can't hear each other is stupid. It's not allowed, right? Like, musicals do that all the time. And so that would be dumb to to say, but what I will say is that it requires a different strategy compared to a direct person-to-person contact duet like Nothing Left to Lose. If you have a they are physically in the room with each other duet, it becomes about the relationship that the characters have to each other. If you have something that all of the characters are united by a theme and they're all singing together but they're in different locations, for example, think Esmeralda from the Hunchback of Notre Dame musical where they're all singing about her, right? Like Phoebus is singing about how he almost died for Esmeralda, Frollo's hunting down Esmeralda, Quasimodo was worried about Esmeralda, like they're not all in the same spot. But the way that that becomes compelling is that they are saying things that the audience needs to hear, even if the characters can't hear each other. In those cases, and also I See the Light, the importance comes from not the characters interacting with each other, but how the characters realize something about themselves. But going back to the context of this movie, I think that the strongest choice, because Magnifico starts by talking to Asha, is for him to keep talking to Asha. I know, what a crazy revelation, right? And I think they should have gone for that Nothing Left to Lose vibe, where Magnifico is singing about the wishes in this possessive way, and then Asha notices this and is like, no, like you shouldn't be treating the wishes that way, like they should be free, or whatever, from Magnifico, and both of them having a clash of ideals about it. But instead, Magnifico sings about his feelings towards the wishes, feelings that we can presume he is not conflicted about whatsoever because he never says, like, anything about a conflict. He's just like, they make me happy the entire time. Like, it's not like Flynn's internal monologue where Flynn is like, in the past, I used to feel this way, but now I feel this way. He's not having a personal growth moment. He's just like, I'm so happy. Why? He's just singing about the status quo, like the feeling that he has always felt towards the wishes. If there is no thesis, if there is no argument that the song is trying to convince us of to get the audience on board with something, if there is no interesting emotional journey for us to go on, we have failed. And Magnifico hasn't even opened his mouth yet. Imagine how different this would be if instead of this song happening for seemingly no reason, the villain and hero duet actually happens after Asha asks for her grandfather's wish to be granted. Magnifico could have started to sing to convince Asha why he knows best. Your grandfather's wish is too dangerous. I need to protect Rosa and the wishes. Look at the wishes. Look at how beautiful they are. Don't you think that I'm the best person to protect them? They can't end up in the wrong hands. You don't want this little misunderstanding to get in the way of being my apprentice, do you? And he could have also sung about his backstory here instead of just restating it in the script. In the rewrite I mentioned in my last video, I had an idea that Magnifico would be crushing wishes to grant wishes, like equivalent exchange. And so if we are keeping the sentiment of at all costs, this would have a double meaning, like the actual cost it takes to grant one wish versus protecting something at all costs. So it would have a nice little sneaky double meaning there. But even with the original movie canon and putting the rewrite aside, I feel like this would have been so much more compelling if Magnifico is revealing to Asha why the wishes are so precious, how magic can be destructive in the wrong hands, how he tragically suffered and he thought he would never be happy again, but then the wishes gave him happiness and hope. You could have had Asha agreeing and understanding how precious they are, but question also why the people of Roses would be considered the wrong hands. Like, doesn't Magnifico think that his own people are good? Isn't it worth possibly, right, the potential for a bad thing to happen as long as we are giving good people the chance to follow their dreams? Like, we can, monitor people, make sure that they're on the right path. We can guide people instead of restricting them. Shouldn't everyone get to feel what you feel, Magnifico? What if other people are depressed like you were once depressed and the wishes would give them hope? Like getting their wish back would make them whole again. Asha could promise that as the king's apprentice, she will help him mediate any issues that will arise from the people getting their wishes back. Again, they just need guidance, right? We don't need to take it away from them. We just need to help teach them, nurture them, kind of like a plant growing, and then Roses will be better for it, right? And that despite the risk, she thinks it's the right thing to do. Think about For the First Time in Forever reprise in Frozen, and how Anna sings about fixing everything, like, it doesn't need to be this way anymore, and then Elsa's like, oh, I'm such a fool, I can't be free, right? And she totally resists that idea. That could be the bridge here, where Magnifico lays down the law and says, I decide what's best for the kingdom. You're a child, you don't know anything, how dare you presume that there is a better way to do things than how I've been doing them, right? How dare you say that I need your help and that I'm doing something wrong? And that way we have a song that starts out as more gentle, a lullaby, but then turns into an actual argument that actually goes somewhere. That's how we make this song matter and be unskippable. It's a battle between what Asha and Magnifico believes to be right. And mind you, this conflict already happens in the movie. It's just through the script. And because it happens through the script, in my opinion, it's not fleshed out very well. Whereas if we had a full song to flesh out Asha's thoughts and really see Magnifico go from like manipulation, you know, like nice manipulation, like, and then all the way to like yelling, that would make us see like, oh, this guy is not a good person. Like at first he was just sort of bribing her, like, don't you want to be my apprentice? I would hate for this to get in the way of, you know, your job or whatever, and then it goes all the way into literally being a tyrant. We could have that growth and those dynamics. Instead, we have Magnifico singing generic things about the wishes. In terms of meter, other than the weird breaths that they're taking for no reason, like in terms of if and, like the structure is not completely horrendous. Where it becomes horrendous is actually in relation to Asha, which we'll talk about later. Even the random weird shit that happens with Amaze Me, like, to me that's fine because this is the first time we're hearing the verse, and so as a songwriter, you can introduce your audience to anything you want, really. Like, where it becomes a problem in terms of content dictates form, form follows function, verses should have, like, the same layout, if not identical. They need to have grounding points so the audience isn't, like, completely confused. They need to share some DNA with each other. Where we have a problem is when we hear Asha's verse and it sounds absolutely nothing like Magnifico's verse did originally, and it gives the vibe to the song that someone just made this up in the shower. I call this like stream of consciousness writing. There is a reason why if you look at any other Disney song, the verses are the same. It is there to help you. So all of that to say, I don't think that this alone is some sort of like crime against music or something like that. It's just that it feels forgettable here with Magnifico in relation to Asha's part. Like if Asha's verse made any goddamn sense, maybe I'd be able to remember this, right? But I don't remember a single thing about this song because it has no flow. It has no rhythm. It has no consistency. It is just a stream of consciousness. So when we talk about fun sounds, we are usually referring to alliteration, assonance, and other mysterious fun things, such as, say, a word ending on a vowel and then someone starting the next lyric on that same vowel sound, like those little nuances. Some more things that are fun sounds to me are when a phrase is packaged together, so friends on the other side, right? Like that's a phrase, you know, it's not just words where you're only paying attention to what the ending rhyme is. Like they're a package deal, do not separate them. Then you can also have something like there is a word in the first verse that doesn't rhyme with anything until you hear the second verse. So for example, you could have sun and one and immediately like those two things don't rhyme like in their own verse, but then when you put them side by side, you're like, oh, the sun from verse 1 rhymed with the one from verse 2. But we don't have any of that. And like, this isn't something that you force in or should force in if you're writing your own music for the sake of it. It's just one of those things that you naturally start falling in the rhythm of doing because it sounds pleasing to your ears. And I just feel like that this song suffers by not having anything interesting in an auditory way to hang on to. Speaking about nothing to hold on to, rhymes. Alright, thing and bring is a perfect rhyme. Sure, you and untrue is a perfect rhyme. Fine. Lives and time isn't. Wind and in isn't, and like wish uses imperfect rhymes, so this is nothing new. Pop music also tends to use more imperfect rhymes than musical theater music. Like, I don't actually mind lives and time that much, but like in a verse, you're supposed to help the audience get into the song. Like, you need to get them secure so they can come along for the ride with you. I don't know if this is very effective, like in terms of having like punchy lyrics, punching opening, punching closing, to lines that make the verse more memorable. Going back to Barbie Princess and the Pauper, because I've analyzed this song before, look at Free's verses and how much I've marked up those verses compared to Magnifico's verse. There are just more fun things to discover in the Barbie song. And as a singer, I'm excited to do Annalise's part about the lessons, lords, and lunches, and the to-do lists in the way, because it's satisfying, like it's fun. It's fun to sing. But with this, I'm convinced that if I wasn't looking at the lyrics right now, I wouldn't remember anything past this opening line. Like, I can't, and that's kind of distressing for me, because as a singer, like, I tend to memorize things really, really well. I can hear a song once or maybe twice, and then I got it. I could sing it back to you. I can't do anything. And I've been looking at the song for weeks, and so what's gonna happen to the audience member that was in the theater and saw the song once? Like, your goal, right, is that that audience member is in the theater and they leave the theater singing the song to themselves. If they can't do that, you have failed in some way, right? If you can't remember it, what you just watched is a problem. And again, these are not Wish's most offensive rhymes, they're just forgettable, and that's the theme throughout this entire video. And in terms of the lyrical meaning here, as I already explained, Magnifico is just singing vague things about the wishes. And what bothers me isn't even like the vagueness, but just the redundancy. Creating a song should be like stacking building blocks on top of each other to make a staircase, right? You have safe behind these windows and these parapets of stone. I have spent my entire life here. And then, but despite the fact I've only ever lived up here in the bell tower, I'm hungry for the histories the people down there would show me. Then, not only this, but I have spent so much time gazing longingly at other people that I have memorized their faces. That's how much I stare at them. I know everything about them and all of their routines, and I wish that someone would know me as well as I know them. And then, because of all of this, I wonder how it would feel like to be down there with them, with the people I know so well, instead of being alone up here. We stack towards a revelation, and then we have another one. But Magnifico says, the wishes are happiness 8 different times. He talks about the past and says, if someone told me the wishes were happiness before I saw them, I would think that they're lying. Like, okay, people search for happiness like you bring all of their lives. Sure. But like, we get it, they make you happy, dude. You still amaze me no matter how much time goes by. I kind of figured that out by now, like you've kind of been saying this. You pull me in like some kind of wind. That's a terrible lyric. What does some kind of wind even mean? Like, if not wind, what is some kind of wind? A black hole? I'm mesmerized. I know, dude, like you said that. I think that you just said that in like a bunch of different ways. This is not new information. And then we have the completely backwards phrasing here with leave you here. I don't wanna. Right? Instead of I don't want to leave you here. And I can't even understand the reason for this because it doesn't rhyme with anything anyway. Like, wanna doesn't rhyme with anything, so why did you have to phrase it this way? Why didn't you just say, I don't want to leave you here, right? Maybe if they thought that that sounded clunky, they could have just said, I don't want to leave you. I wanna, right? I don't want to let you go. I wanna, right? Like if they were afraid that, I don't know, something in that phrase didn't roll off the tongue very well. But it's not like this matches anything, so who gives a fuck? Make it coherent. So after utilizing multiple examples, can you guys understand why I'm saying that absolutely nothing of substance happened here? Like with Quasimodo, again as our example, or any other well-written Disney song, you can't easily predict where we're going. Like Quasimodo could have really said anything after like gazing at the people down below me. He could have said, yeah, I watched the people up here and they suck. They're heartless and they're mean and they're shallow. Frollo was right. You don't immediately know that he wants to go down there and join them until he says it. Every piece of information builds to that revelation. But here we start with the revelation of how important the wishes are to Magnifico and like that they make him happy. But they just restate that over and over again. So in my head, we could have done Magnifico's sad boy backstory and how his family and the entire kingdom he used to live in, everyone died and it was torn apart, right? He thought he would never feel happy again, and then as another building block, then he saw a wish for the first time, which we don't even know how this happened, by the way. But however it happened, he saw a wish for the first time and it filled him with joy. He realized that he needed the wishes to feel happy and have hope because he has no hope. After what happened to his family and his previous kingdom, he lost all hope, he became depressed. This is the only thing that's keeping him going. It's sort of like Peter and the Starcatchers, where pixie dust is actually star stuff and it comes from meteors and there's this whole lore in the book. But anyway, like it heals you of all your ailments and it makes you like happy in a ethereal way. Like I couldn't even explain it to you. Like it's just like they're literally in the happiest mindset that they could possibly be. Like it's a euphoria when people accidentally come in contact with the star stuff. They feel like all their problems are solved. We could have had, what if the wishes go away and I can never feel happy again? I can't lose that, therefore I will promise. So I hope that this has illustrated the difference in a good song versus a bad song, and why this is just so foul, because every single lyric in Magnifico's verse is filler, whereas what I suggested is an actual journey that leads us to a revelation. Because of Magnifico's tragic backstory, he was afraid he would never feel joy again, but the wishes changed his life and they ease his pain, so he will protect them at all costs, as opposed to him just saying how happy he is, and how much he likes them, and how much they amaze him. Like, they had an opportunity to create conflict, to show us what Magnifico would lose if he lets the wishes go, right? Because then Asha's suggestion to return the wishes to their rightful owners would mean that Magnifico loses something. He loses the feeling that he's addicted to, his only source of happiness after tragedy, and there's conflict in this. And that's how we can see Magnifico being, yes, tragic if you really want to make him that way, but also selfish, right? Instead of healing from his own trauma and realizing that being happy again is possible, but it will take effort on his part, he is kind of like an emotional vampire on the entire kingdom. Like, he's depending on other people to make him happy instead of making his own happiness. And he's depriving people of the most important part of themselves, so his joy and his joy alone can be maintained. And now we arrive at the chorus, where again, I don't have a lot to say when it comes to meter, fun sounds, or rhymes, because nothing's going on here. I will say that this weird pop of the eye really annoys me, because that's like usually a pop song convention. It doesn't have an emotional purpose. You'll see that a lot. The I will protect you. Like, why didn't you just say what you were going to say? It doesn't seem like an emotional expression or declaration. In theater, we usually use O or like whoa, like in Shakespeare. So I don't really like this that much, but like, it's fine, I guess. We have a consistent meter with the courses being the same, but we don't have anything fun going on. And like, this is the hook of the song, but I'm kind of concerned that the best they could have done was does and cost, like as a slant rhyme, when no one has used those words before ever. Really nothing rhymes with cost, and so that's probably why this happened. And in that case, like, why even use costs, right? Or just find a better slant rhyme. Like, I'm sure that they exist. Like, I'm not saying that your pop song hook needs to have a rhyme in it to be catchy, but like, I don't think that this is catchy, and that's what a hook is at least supposed to do. My thing about at all costs as a thesis is that it doesn't have the same uniqueness as Poor Unfortunate Souls, or Friends on the Other Side, or even something like When You Wish Upon a Star, right? Where the hook of the song is deeply intertwined with the character or the thesis of the story. Like, at all costs could be any character in existence. But if this sentiment really means that much, find a better lyric than promise as one does, because that's just awkward and cringy. Like, no one has ever said this. I'll make a promise, you know, as one does. Like, it makes it sound so unserious and just so bland. Like, you guys know I have dropped my standards when I'm not even asking for a perfect rhyme, but just something that is not this, right? Like, most people do not make promises that are equivalent to, I'll give up my life for you, and then go, you know, like, as one does. Like, that's not an as one does scenario. Like, you may do your taxes as one does, right? But, like, risking your life is an extreme scenario. The entire point of a song like this is that no one else is brave enough to do this. Only Magnifico and Asha will protect the wishes at all costs. That's why they're the main fucking characters, right? Because they exist in a world of extremes. But promise, you know, as one does, that is not an extreme at all. So back to this rhyming situation, you could argue that like nothing is supposed to rhyme here, but why this choice is so strange to me is because when I think of a lullaby or an incantation like starlight, star bright, First star I see tonight, I wish I may, I wish I might, have the wish I wish tonight. There are a lot of rhymes there, and that's what makes it feel magical. It makes it sound like a magic spell. And so this is loosely connected to the idea of content dictates form. If all signs are pointing for you, as the songwriter, to write something that is a lullaby, why not make it sound like an actual lullaby that is for children? Like nursery rhymes have rhymes for a reason, right? And I actually use that wishing star incantation for my own original musical. Obviously, like, it's public domain, so I'm not saying that you can't steal it. But what I did was that I used the incantation and then I changed some of the wording to be more specific to my character because it's something that everyone has heard before, so it's familiar. They will immediately feel the power of what it means for my fairy tale princess character to desperately be wishing upon a star, because that's something that we associate with wishing upon a star. But yet it still has the specificity to that character, right? So you get a good mix of surprising yet inevitable. The surprising part are the changes that are made to an incantation or a nursery rhyme or a magic spell that we've all already heard before. But the familiarity is the fact that it is something that we have all heard before. The surprising part for the audience in that case is the information that they are learning and how something that is familiar to them has been changed. But what can make them feel secure is the fact that it is familiar in the first place. Everybody knows that thing. I'm just wondering, like, we did not need to reinvent the wheel here. Why in a movie that everything is about the wishes? We surround the wishes. We did not use the wishing phrase in the song that people say when they wish upon a star. And again, it's already catchy because that phrase is designed in mind to have a built-in melodic structure to it. So why not use the starlight and the stardust and all of that stuff to make this better? But anyway, I feel like that all these issues are connected with each other in the sense that at all costs is a very strong sentiment if they had bothered to explore it properly. But the problem is the rest of the lyrics surrounding it are really vague, and they aren't even poetic, and they don't evoke any emotion at all. Think about Quasimodo again. Taste the morning out there like an ordinary man, and what that means. You have a sort of vague-ish sentiment, if you want to call it that, in out there, but the in-between parts is what gives the song depth, and the character depth, and that emotional resonance. So not only are these lyrics devoid of any sort of poetry, they're just devoid of context in general. If you didn't watch the movie, you would have no idea that At All Costs is a thesis in regards to the wishes. When I mentioned poor unfortunate souls or friends on the other side and all that stuff, I'm sure at least one of you guys was like, but what about this song, right? Because to be fair, Go the Distance, Out There, and Part of Your World are vague sentiments. Like, they are a bit more general than poor unfortunate souls, you know what I mean? But what it is that they are surrounded by enough specificity that you can't get through the song without understanding the context. So it's not that you can't have a vague title or a vague lyric, it's that that vague lyric needs to be reinforced by specific things. If they had the imagery of starlight, star bright, or stardust or something, that would have made the song more unique and not just sound like a pop song that could be from any singer. Because without the visuals of the movie, you're asking yourself, what are we promising to keep safe? A person? An object? Like a society? We're trying to keep a society safe? From who? Who is after the object of the protection? What happens if we don't keep the thing safe? Will the kingdom fall? Like, not that a kingdom is even mentioned here. Will people die? Will we lose something if we lose this mysterious object that was never identified in the lyrics? Who is singing? Why are they singing? You would have no idea if you heard this song outside of the context of the movie and tried to extrapolate what the plot was. And I don't think that the songwriters had any idea either, because Julia Michaels has absolutely no idea how to tell a story in this context. She knows how to write vague lyrics that people will relate back to their own lives and project their own story onto. And even though this does not apply to every pop song, I think that a common difference between musical theater songs and pop is that in most pop songs, the character's story isn't what is moving you because usually there is no character. It's the story that you imagine in your head while listening to the lyrics. Like, that is what's moving you. I mentioned this in the Chapel Roan video, but some pop songs are the equivalent of like a Your Character Here template, or like prompts for a self-insert OC where the pop singer talks about like how beautiful your blue, gray, green eyes are in order not to alienate anyone. Like, we wouldn't want to make a specific choice. We need to make it so you think that it could be about you. Though there are clear exceptions, a pop song's job a lot of the time is to make you the main character, not to make you have any empathy for a different character. The chorus is usually the thesis of the entire song, and it captures the point of us being here in a musical. But the problem with like some of these pop writers, right, is that they make these incredibly generic lyrics so people can be like, I sing this about my cat, or my limited edition Nintendo 3DS, or my child, or my significant other, or Albedo from Genshin Impact, right? And in that attempt to appeal to everyone by being vague, like with something as common as protect the things you care about, in the context of a musical, the intensity and specificity is completely lost. Musical theater has specificity and uses the specificity of that storytelling as a vessel for general themes that resonate with everyone, with stories that say something about what it means to be human. But instead of making choices and letting people feel things through the specificity of those choices, we just skip right into like a feeling that every human being has felt before, probably, at least for something, and it almost tricks people into being like, well, this is relatable to me, this made me feel something, so that means that the song is good, right? But like, the song is just describing general feelings. The song doesn't give me an actual reason to care about the characters that are singing about those feelings. And in a pop song, you don't need to care about the singer, but in a musical, yes, you do need to care about the character. There is no reason to root for Magnifcio, no reason for us to listen to the song all the way through because it will provide no useful insight or emotional information. These lyrics could be sung by any pop singer, and that's really bad when, again, they should be unique to the context and personality of a specific character. And then we get to Asha's verse, and holy fuck, I am not afraid to admit that I don't understand anything that's happening here. Because I know that that's not a reflection on me. Like, I can hear with my ears there is something similar happening that is adjacent to the original Magnifcio verse that we heard. But if you look at them side by side, it's fucking whack. Like, the difference in structure is just too much to reconcile. I actually thought that this was the bridge of the song, but it's not. Apparently it's not. It's another verse. This part literally gave me psychic damage, and writing this part of the script, like, confounded me for days. This is the verse? Like, do you guys see what the problem is here? And at this point, I've just resorted to showing you guys better songs and how they're structured in comparison to get my point across, because this made me lose all ability to command the English language. I don't know what else to say about this other than it's whack. It feels like improv, stream of consciousness, and I actually think that they use some of the I have reservations and hesitations vibe from this wish, and they just stuck it in there, right? But it's not even a limb motif. They just stuck the same sort of vibe in there because they wanted Asha to do it again later. It's just so weird. And this whole thing is just so confusing. And what's really unfortunate about this is that we do have some sounds in here like what's, when, way, explain, even, hurt, happen, haven't, hope, but like now we're just sort of trying too hard, especially like in comparison to what we heard from Magnifcio. It's exactly like this wish, especially that reservations and hesitations part where they wanted to sound so clever just for the sake of it, not because it's actually true to Asha's personality. Every single character at some point in Wish will talk like this. Like, this is not reserved for just Asha. Everyone from Asha to Magnifcio to the Queen to like the random friends to the fucking animals will try to mimic Lin-Manuel Miranda. And then we have things like pain, explain, you too, used to do, but it doesn't sound natural. It sounds like an alien mimicking human poetry. But what's even worse than any of this, like, I could forgive this if you had something meaningful to tell me. But what's worse is that this is literally like just a stream of consciousness, not just in the structure, but it's actually a stream of consciousness in terms of how she's talking. Like, if someone tried to hurt you, dot dot dot. I don't see how that could happen. Like, did she get distracted in the middle of her sentence? Like, what does that even mean? And I can generously say, maybe the wishes are so pure and innocent that someone would have to be a complete monster to damage them or something. But like, that isn't what she said. What it sounds like she said is, if someone tried to hurt you, wait, no, I don't see how that could happen. Never mind. And she just like disappears and walks away. Then we also have, it would be all right to stay here right beside you. Like, this is another, it's unlikely you'll be unhappy from Welcome to Roses. Like, Magnifico spent an entire verse talking about how the wishes were the epitome of happiness, and Asha's like, oh, it'll be all right. It'll be just all right if I could stay here. Like, what do you mean it'll just be all right? Like, I would do anything to stay here. Again, we need to work in some extremes, and the reason why this particular lyric also bothers me so much is because I feel like, again, they did it to be clever. They wanted, it would be all right to stay right here beside you. They wanted the right back to back, but in the pursuit of trying to sound like interesting, they don't make any fucking sense. Can we go back up here to I'll never dream how I used to do? Shouldn't that just be I'll never dream like I used to? That's another case of forcing this cleverness when it's really just like stupid. Like, this is a stupid way to have a double rhyme. And again, I understand what they were probably trying to go for, but this actually sounds like it has the opposite meaning here. The phrasing is just way off here, and maybe that's overly nitpicky, but it would have been more clear to imply that Asha did not dream big enough, or that she didn't dream at all before, right? Maybe, I said this in my rewrite, I think, that Asha's like only dream is to be with her father, and like, so she doesn't actually have a wish or something. Like, she wished for her father to get better, but he's dead, and so she's like the only person that's in a weird sort of stasis. So it could have been like, I never dreamed before. Like, I'm the only person in Rosas who didn't have a dream, who didn't have a wish, but now I'll never dream how I used to, right? Like, now I have so many possibilities in front of me. Like, I see the magic, I believe in the fairies, right? But instead it sounds like they're saying that she did dream, and her dreams just sucked, I guess, and so now she's gonna make bigger dreams, but we didn't even know, like, what her dreams were before. When writing lyrics in the pursuit of clarity, it is easier to work in the extremes. Like, when I look at you, I see endless possibilities, or I never dreamt about or wished for anything because I didn't believe in magic before seeing you, but now I believe in magic. Like, that's a lot easier than, I'll never dream how I used to do again because after seeing you, ... and then not knowing what the revelation is and like us just having to guess. As another example, think about it this way. If I told you, guys, I'll never make dessert for Thanksgiving how I used to do you have a frame of reference for what my Thanksgiving dessert was before and what I mean it'll be like after? Like, does this mean that my dessert was bad and I have a new idea on how to make it better? Does it mean that my dessert was good but no one appreciated it and so I'm throwing in the towel? I've decided I don't want to do it anymore. Does this mean that my dessert was good but I figured out how to take it to a brand new level? Like, we don't know. You can't make a statement like that because we don't know what the previous iteration of Asha's dream was. All at once, everything is different now that I see you entangled makes sense to us because they describe what their lives were before and what their wishes now. But this doesn't make any sense because we have no context for it. And then they go on and sing together, which again, just would have been stronger if they had a conflicting opinion like I suggested. Like, imagine them singing the same thesis for a completely different and opposing reason, with Asha's intentions being pure while Magnifico's are corrupted. Like, I just don't see the purpose in them singing together at all, other than, ooh, look, pleasant harmony, let's go. And now we get into what is supposedly the real bridge. But I feel like if you actually look at all these things side by side, is this not closer to Magnifico's verse compared to what happened with Asha? If you look at these things side by side, even in the vocal line, all come find you is similar to it would be you from before. The same thing happens with if you're ever feeling like you're lost, and that being similar in terms of the vocal line to if happiness was a changeable thing. The meter is similar. The vocal line is also similar. I feel like it just put up a key or something. And so this makes me think that they use the verse structure from Magnifico's verse, and they use that melody, and they just put it in a higher key. But Asha's solo part that I talked about before is officially categorized as a verse, which means this bridge has verse form, but bridge content, whereas Asha's section has verse content, but something that is just totally different, that it feels like it should be bridge form. And that's why we're in like absolutely critical failure land here, because this song is just like confused. Basically, Asha's part should have been a verse. This should have been a bridge. Instead, the bridge is a verse. And Asha's verse is a bridge, right? And instead of this bridge providing us with literally anything interesting, all we get is them reiterating that they would do anything for the wishes, which we already fucking know, bestie. Like, when Out There has a bridge, it's about how the villagers don't appreciate their lives, whereas Quasimodo would give up anything to be one of them. They are heedless of the gift it is to be them, right? When Ariel has her bridge, she's sung about what she wants. It's then what she will sacrifice and pay to get it. Building blocks. The bridge has the tension, the suspense. It's where the choice is made. The characters have to evolve from talking about the status quo by now. Like, they can't just keep talking about what they want or like how they would even feel to get what they want. Instead, there needs to be like some twist, some revelation, some sort of tension in the bridge. And usually that's like the cost or the price or like some other thing. Again, in my eyes, the bridge usually creates this desperation and tension. And I've heard some lyricists describe this as the turning point, right? Because the tension and the desperation means that a choice has to be made. And whatever happens after the bridge is evidence of that decision. But here we just have them singing about the same things that they have been singing about the entire time. And then we hear the chorus again, but that doesn't have any changes either. This journey is entirely pointless. We didn't even go on one. To talk about specific things, Man All Fronts is just a terrible lyric, does not make any sense. I'll Swear on My Response is just like another terrible lyric. I'm sure you've heard this from other YouTubers that have covered Wish. But what really bothers me is if you're ever feeling like you're lost, I'll come find you, because wishes don't feel anything. It doesn't make any sense to personify the wishes like that. Like, it would be different if Asha said, if the wishes got lost somehow, she would find them. But like, the wishes can't feel anything. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Like, even in poetry, right? When we're giving some sort of emotional expression to an inanimate object, like something that doesn't have human emotions, it's because the object itself displays something that makes us think of an emotion, right? Like if you said like, oh, the sky is crying when it's raining, you can say that because we associate water with tears and whatever. And then also, like, additionally, some people, when it rains, they get really sad, like seasonally depressed and all that stuff. And so you personify the sky because the action that the sky is doing has humanness to it, or you see the humanness to it even though it's not actually there. But like, the wishes just float there. Like if they changed color or something when they felt threatened, or maybe like when they felt like they were in danger, whatever the dream and the wish was, it turned into a nightmare in some way, like that would be different. But instead they're just like there, so I really don't get this at all. I love Shakespeare, I love poetry, I don't consider myself like this super literal thinker. I don't mind Magnifcio saying it would be you earlier, because you can personify that inanimate object in relation to yourself, right? Like if such and such, it would be you. If I felt such and such, it would be you. But the wishes can't feel like they're lost. Like, being lost is like a factual state. You're either lost or you're not lost. Maybe like emotionally you feel lost, but I'm pretty sure that she's talking about like physically lost, like if somebody stole them and like took them away. So like, you can feel lost in your life, right? But the actual physical state of being lost is objective. You either are lost or you aren't lost. You don't feel like you're lost. You are lost. Like, I can say, I love you, my Nintendo 3DS, but I can't say, Nintendo 3DS, if you ever feel like you're lost, I'll come find you. Like, it would be, if it ever gets lost, I will tear the house apart looking for you because you have a very expensive capture card that they don't make anymore, or something like that. You know what I mean? And so I just feel like that's just really weird. And that's like my one thing I haven't seen a lot of people talk about that I'm like, this is so stupid. This song could have been an email, and if not for my valuable educational insight and witty sense of humor combined with the revelation I'm about to provide to you, this video probably could have been an email too. Like, I had to work so hard to make this, like, to the point where I was like, do I post this? Like, is this actually valuable to anyone? I was like, okay, at least hopefully someone will learn something, and then other people will have a little tee-hee. Like, those are my two goals, really. Either I made you laugh, or I provided you with some insight that, like, helps you in your storytelling in some way. And so, like, even with that in mind, I had to work hard to make this insightful, because dissecting this song was literally like trying to cook ice for dinner. It gave me literally nothing. But I promise I still have something incredibly important that I want you guys to hear, because we've gone through the entire song, but have we talked about why the song ended up this way and how this can be avoided? And before I answer that, I just want to thank all my patrons and YouTube membership members for continuing to support me. If you want to get early access to my content and allow me to continue creating videos in the first place, please consider joining them. And if you want me to make you your own video about any song you want, you can check out my commissions over on Ko-fi and get me to talk this long about your hyperfixation. I also have songwriting consulting commissions where you can send me your song and I can provide you insight on how to improve it. Like, think closer to Welcome to Roses or Happy Day in Hell, like how that video was, but more for your own personal use. But it's not just like the little specific things and the minute details, it's more the big questions, right? Like, imagine every video I have this like, oh, this big revelation, this thing that you need to hear. Imagine like 10 of those things, right? And so I hope that if you're interested in that, you guys will reach out to me, because I love consulting, I love helping people bring their stories to life, and so feel free to reach out. But now, without further ado, we answer the question, why the fuck is this song so bad? Yes, we have talked about it has no story, it has no characterization, it has boring instrumental, there's no musical theater reactive elements, it has no themes, it has no emotion, it has no point. But like I said, it fails on every level, so how can I find some secret thing to reveal near the end of the video? Usually I try not to make things personal, but we are not talking about the flaws of the song anymore. Instead, we are talking about the hubris of a songwriter and how that caused all the problems that we are seeing. This is a direct quote. Since there was no love song in the film, Michaels wanted to write a song that, as a standalone, sounded like a love song that could be played at weddings. Yet in the context of the film, it's about a heroine and a villain, says Michaels. How cool would it be if we wrote a song that, if you listened to it on its own, it sounded like a love song? It could be something you could play at your wedding, or be a lullaby to your kids, just something really beautiful. But when you watch the film, it's the heroine and it's the villain, she continues. You realize they're both coming about this from various points. One a very selfless standpoint, and one a very selfish standpoint. And that line is so ridiculous to me, because who realized that? I didn't realize that. How could someone possibly leave the song thinking that? Magnifico and Asha have the same generic lyrics. Like, I don't feel like Magnifico is any more or less selfish than Asha. You did not develop the theme of selfishness versus selflessness and that contrast whatsoever. But my beef isn't entirely with that, so let's look at the rest of the quote. People speculated that At All Costs was originally written as a love song between Starboy and Asha. During the development of the movie, if you didn't know, Star was originally a Peter Pan-like Starboy who was an homage to older trickster characters in Disney movies like Peter Pan. So people latched onto the idea that At All Costs was originally a Starboy x Asha love song. However, I don't actually believe this. Like, I can't find anything confirming this to be the case. The evidence that people are using is that in the demo, they sing Love You as one does instead of Promise as one does, but in everything that I could find, the Starboy in the movie was mute, and so I don't really understand why he would be singing a love song with Asha, you know what I mean? Like, unless it's happening in his head, I guess. I guess that that's allowed. I would prefer a mute character to just be mute personally, but that's why I don't really think that that's what happened. And I think that it was scrapped too early in development for that to be the case. My personal theory is, again, we don't really have a hard answer, so grain of salt, whatever. I think Love You was just in there because Julia Michaels wrote the songs to Wish as she would, like, for any pop artist. And I'm not a pop music expert, but it is to my understanding that unless you are like a big brand, when you're first starting out, a lot of singers are not writing their own material or don't have their own personal team. Instead, like, you're sort of pitched general material that's written by someone else, and then that singer's team decides whether or not to, like, buy the song, right? And then they can make changes to it to reflect the singer's brand. Even though some pop artists are singer-songwriters, there's kind of the option to go like the Build-A-Bear route, basically. Like, you're receiving the pre-made bear, but then you're customizing the bear's aesthetic to fit with your brand after the fact. Like, it probably doesn't happen like this, but for example, imagine that there are people that are like getting paid by some sort of network to write songs, and then those songs go in a database, and then the managers for these individual people can buy the songs. That's what I'm imagining. That's probably not actually the case, but that is how it works in terms of my head. That's the easiest way I can think of how to explain the process. So I don't think that Starboy was even really a thought when they were doing this. I feel like that instead they wrote something generic and just like hoped and prayed that it could be applied anywhere. And there is no evidence to suggest that she even knew it would be about Magnifcio and Asha, because despite what was said about the contrast between the selfishness and the selflessness, right? Like, that is not in the song at all. I don't want to call her a liar because that would imply some sort of malicious intent, right? Like, maybe she does believe that she did a good job at portraying this conflict, but I'm here to tell you that she didn't. In terms of the facts of what we have discussed, the statement that the conflict here is portrayed in these lyrics is untrue. You could be generous and just say it's not portrayed well, but there are hints of it, but I will die on the hill that it is not portrayed at all. There is not a single line that gives me the impression that Magnifcio is being selfish. And so that statement, to me, cannot be anything but a lie, because by nature, it is a contradiction. You can't have a song that sounds like a love song and can be played at people's weddings and sounds romantic, but also sounds like a lullaby for parents to their children, but also a song that goes into detail and depth about the selfishness of a villain versus the selflessness of a hero. These premises cannot coexist with each other. You cannot state that you intentionally designed something to be vague enough to have multiple use cases, right? Romantic, parent to child, all of these different things that she wanted, but then also make the claim that it goes into the emotional specificity and the conflict of ideals between Magnifcio and Asha. Because if this song actually leaned into the hero versus villain element, there would be absolutely no way it could be interpreted as a love song or a lullaby. If they did Magnifcio right, it would actually end up sounding abusive and possessive to the common person. Like, if they gave this song character, no one would want to use it as a love song. Like, Magnifcio would be following around, like, with the wishes while Asha wants to set them free. And they would have argued about that in a way that is suspenseful and stressful. Musical theater is not a medium of multiple use cases, okay? I have said this before in other videos, even though there is metaphor and there is poetry and like those things can be up for interpretation, musical theater as a whole is very direct. You can't interpret out there as being anything other than Quasimodo longing for acceptance and belonging in a very specific hunchback situation. You may play the song outside of its original context as you're going through your life, right? Like, your life is not one-to-one with Quasimodo. Like, maybe you're listening to out there as you go to school or on a trip or to an audition, but you can't interpret the actual lyrics of the song as anything other than a hunchback locked behind these windows and these parapets of stone. You can't interpret Hellfire as being anything other than Frollo punishing and blaming Esmeralda for his own unholy lust, and that if she will not be with him, she will burn at the stake. You cannot sing Hellfire to your kids. You cannot play Hellfire at your wedding. You cannot get any more direct than a medium where people will literally look you in the eye and sing about their deepest, truest, most vulnerable feelings and desires. The issue with this song is that it is, by Julia Michaels' own definition, characterization, the exact opposite of what a musical theater song is supposed to be. If you had done your job correctly as a musical theater songwriter, your song should not be vague enough that parents could sing it to their children, and it could be romantic, and it could be the conflict of ideals between a hero and a villain. You could not have your cake and eat it too. You could not be vague and then have your songs be crucial for the narrative as she was trying to describe it, when it's not. This was not originally in the script, but last night I read a very interesting book by Hammerstein, and he said something that I think fits perfectly here. There are few things in life of which I am certain, but I am sure of this one thing, that the song is the servant of a play, that it is wrong to write first what you think is an attractive song and to wedge it into the story. So the conclusion that we come to is that the reason why the song is so bad is because how did it even have a chance? How could it have even been good when the songwriter had no interest in doing her job to make it good? She had no intention of making it crucial to the story. She wanted it to be able to stand alone, and so it does. At the detriment to the entire narrative, which she doesn't care about because she's not a musical theater storyteller. She is a pop music writer. And that's why this song genuinely, evokes a feeling of disgust in me. So if that was your, mission to at least evoke an emotion, that's what it did for me, because it is like a physical representation of how disrespectful people are towards musical theater as a medium of storytelling. Like how disrespectful it was to hire a pop song writer who had no previous experience writing a musical in the first place, because she didn't care about writing a musical. She wanted something for herself that just happened to be in the movie. Truly, it does make me feel disgusted, because how dare people compare Julia Michaels to Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, to people who dedicated their lives to using music to breathe life into these stories because they genuinely believed that the story could be told no other way. That's why you make a musical, by the way, not just because it's fun, but because you think that that is the best way to tell your story, as opposed to just film, like live action film where there is no singing. You do it because you truly believe in the medium. But in order for her work to be used in multiple different contexts, Julia Michaels made it as vague as possible, showcasing to me that she held the narrative purpose of musical theater in the lowest possible regard. That is why this is the worst song in the movie. We have covered how the song fails from a technical level, but when we ask ourselves, well, why did it fail? It's because the songwriter has admitted to having a shallow, self-serving, conflicting motivation for writing this song. A musical theater song should exist to give the character their heart and soul in a way that is deeply intertwined with the narrative, and that is key for the storytelling, not to fulfill some egotistical fantasy where you're imagining Disney adults dancing at their wedding to a song which is, mind you, romantically coded, yet is also about a teenage girl and an adult man. I'm not sorry. Not only is this song antithetical to the entire idea of a musical theater song, but that's just weird. Why would anyone want to dance to that, knowing the context of the teenage girl and the 40-year-old man? That's why this song cannot be fixed with just a couple rewrites, because the entire foundation of it is bullshit. But if you want to see me actually fix one of Wish's songs, please check out my Welcome to Roses video. As I said, this video was practically impossible to do in my regular usual format because, we can't fix this song. In my opinion, the whole thing needs to be tossed away. This would be a major project to rewrite this and try to salvage it in some way. I like to go in and help people with their songs so they can tell the most powerful story possible, but I can't tackle something that wasn't even an honest attempt at telling a story in the first place. So this has been Calxiyn caring way too much, and I hope you care too. I will see you next time. Bye!